Oh, welcome back. I am the video game plague doctor, and today we're taking a look at a classic game that plays other classic games from another era before mine. And I am talking about Activision's classics for the PS1. This was my second exposure to the Atari 2600. When I was in middle school, my teacher had an Atari 2600 in his classroom. It was a 4-switch Darth Vader model. I own a wood grain 6-switch model in my home. Yes, it still works beautifully too, and it is far older than I am. Activision's classics exposed me to one of the best games the Atari 2600 had in its collection, but on the PlayStation 1. If it wasn't for this game, my love would have not have grown for the Atari 2600. The 30 games this collection has a lot of favorites of mine from Activision, before they started doing Call of Duty twice a year, saturating the first-person shooter genre, in my opinion. Activision created one of the best classic games for the little wood grain console that could. They literally dominated the Atari 2600 scene. However, Atari themselves did make many great games, but Activision owned it hard. The best thing I could say about Activision's classics is the menu music. When I play my actual Atari, the music from this game plays in my head. It is timeless and nostalgic for me in every single way. The games control as you'd expect them to. D-pad controls your character in-game, the cross button is the action button, the square button allows you to use the black and white color function just like on an actual Atari 2600, the L1 button resets the game, and the L2 and R2 buttons set your difficulty without having to go into the menu. The in-game menu is accessed by pressing the select button. Here you can pretty much control whatever aspect that you need here, from controller inputs, difficulty settings, audio, the ability to adjust the screen, load, and save the game. However, I wish you could change the game selection within the sub-menu. You have to quit the game every single time to select a game variation, which is a real bummer. The PS1 should be able to handle this, but they didn't program it in this way. They made it so the PS1 has to load each variation. Another thing I have to add is a simple fact that the sound effects are quite muffled compared to the native system the PS1 is trying to emulate. Here, have a listen to Enduro sound effects. Now listen to Enduro as it should sound. It doesn't sound very good. It sounds like they recorded the game's sound effects with a tube sock tied around studio foam and shoved a microphone into it somehow. It sounds like absolute garbage. When I was younger, this did not bother me as I never played the actual games on an actual Atari 2600, so I could not have known if this was actually supposed to sound the way it actually sounds. Also, another thing that is not perfect about Activision's classics is the frame rate. Let's look at Enduro again. Look at how choppy the PS1 handles Enduro. And this is how Enduro looks like on the actual hardware. Yes, I am using Stella as a comparison. You may be telling yourself, well, show us what it looks like on the actual Atari 2600. I will tell you that I play Enduro on my actual Atari, and it is literally the same exact thing on Stella, so there is no comparison. Another thing that is not perfect is Fishing Derby, one of my favorite Activision games. The hitbox for your line is so inaccurate that the fish completely ignores my fishing line. I have waved my line all over this fish and it completely and simply refuses to bite. I do not have problems with this playing on its actual hardware. Check it out. As you can see, I have no issues getting the fish to bite, thus, I lost on the PS1 version of Fishing Derby. One of my favorite games is Frostbite. The colors are very different from the original game. Also, the speed of gameplay is vastly different. Movement is much more faster than what I am currently used to when I'm in the mood for some Frostbite. Here is the original game. It is far more different, but the PS1 version is still very playable, and it is fun. This may be the last favorite I mention here, which is Keystone Capers. Again, the colors are different, and the gameplay is sped up immensely. I don't know what Activision was doing here at the time, but for a first experience, this isn't terrible at all. It's still solid, controls well, and it's still addicting. But I still prefer the original Keystone Capers than the PS1 adaptation. "30 games on one disc. All not so perfect in translation, but playable. Games I still enjoy, and that I still go back to. I would not have gotten myself an Atari 2600 if this wasn't the case. If it wasn't for this game, I also would have never explored Atari's library of games and found favorites among their games as well. But this game only covers Activision's games, so maybe one day I will talk about other Atari classic favorites of mine another time. Hero. I want to talk about this game really fast actually. This game, collectors-wise, is very expensive and hard to find. I don't understand why Activision didn't release many copies of this game, as it's one of their best platformers besides Pitfall. Seeing the gameplay for yourself should make you understand enough why that is. It's a great game, and one of the games I would like to have a physical copy of. But why does it have to be so rare? Oh yeah, I forgot. Skyjinx. Many say this game sucks and is extremely boring. For some odd reason, I enjoy this game a little too much for how simplistic it is. It's just a biplane, flying over a plain green field, dodging air balloons, and flying past markers for the fastest time. Why people dislike this game? It relaxes me, so I do not care what anyone else says. Though I will admit, the most I would play this game in a single session is about 10 minutes. Remember what I said about Fishing Derby having off-base hitboxing? Playing this collection further, I have discovered that many of the games in this collection have the same issue. It is something I cannot ignore. Like I said before, when I played this as a teenager, I could not know whether or not this is how the games were originally on its native hardware. I also cannot believe coming back to this game just to find out how terribly inaccurate these games are. It's as if Activision completely rewrote the code for all 30 individual games to work on the PS1. Bullets pass through enemies in some games like River Raid, but when I play the game on the 2600, I have absolutely no issue shooting every single enemy on the screen with complete precision. Also, the speed increase of the games causes problems as well, where you can dart across the screen far too easily, making it difficult to judge dodging. This is prominent, especially in Spider Fighter. Also, tennis, one of my favorite simple sports games in this collection, I got completely destroyed and could never make a single score against the computer. This got me wondering if I was actually terrible at this game. So I played the original game and come to find out, yes and no. The computer is actually pretty smart, but I was able to score as well. Heck, I even won a match to where it became 1-1. But on the PS1, the computer destroyed me because of the insane speed it plays at, which makes the game feel completely off balance. I am glad I came back to play Activision's classics. It made me realize, even though the game has come to make me love Atari 2600 games, this collection is so imperfect. I cannot speak for Activision's later installments of their later classic releases on the PS2 and onwards. I do remember seeing a release on PS2 called Activision Anthology, which had 48 games loaded onto it. Anthology also saw releases on Windows, Mac, Game Boy Advance, Android, and iOS phones, as well as the PSP. I've never played Anthology, so I cannot comment how accurate the games play in that game collection. Because I played many of these games on its actual hardware, it makes little to no sense to play this version of the games. I know for a fact the PS1 can handle these games flawlessly, but alas, Activision did a poor job in translating the games on a system that far exceeds the recommended specifications for such old titles. In conclusion, this game brings back memories, but it also made me realize that some things are better left behind. I still love the menu music and the nostalgic factor, but I cannot excuse the poor translation of these games on a far more superior piece of technology than that of the Atari 2600. And that today is my verdict. I am the video game plague doctor, and hopefully we'll see each other next time. But until then, farewell.